Okay, hello everyone. My name is Mike Matheson, and in this video, we're going to talk about the best Audible books that are out there, and also, how to read free books online and Audible Amazon Prime. We're going to be talking about the Audible free trial, and we're going to be talking about several of my books that are part of the best Audible books in the world. So you're going to want to find out about that. My website for further details on my Audible books is myaudiblebooks.com. So I hope you'll go there at any point, well, after this video, of course. And we're going to show you a bunch of books that are audible and fun. You could take them with you anywhere, whether you're at work or play. And we're talking about free audiobooks, and we have a free audiobooks app over there. And we show you other free books to read and a lot of how to read books online for free, free Audible books. And you're going to uh, really learn a lot about some of the most advanced scientific books and science fiction that you've ever heard about in your life. Now, my latest Audible book, as an example of what I'm talking about, is called Brain Drain. And if you go to that website, myaudiblebooks.com, you'll see that uh, my my free Audible books, or my best Audible books, or uh, my Audible books, or braindrainbook.com, you'll find out how to get a hold of this Audible book that I think you'll like a lot, because it's one of the finest science fiction stories ever written, and they're going to make an incredible science fiction movie out of it too, I believe. And this is the first picture of a black hole that was ever made. And in our book Brain Drain, we talk about what black holes are made of and how they impact our lives every day. It's an incredible story that weaves in and out of the future and the past, and it's very exciting. You're going to want to get a hold of uh, Brain Drain as soon as you can. It starts with with brain waves, and this is just a picture of one of the lowest brain waves, called an alpha wave, which is 8 to 12 cycles per second. And in brainwave, it's a brain drain. I mean, it's a book about how your brain waves communicate with other brain waves all over the universe, and your reality is really way different than what you think it is, because everything in the universe is waves. Some of them look like this, some of them look much more uh, energetic. So what does this guy have to do with our story? Well, you have to get hold of the book to find out. It's not that kind of story, but it is a classic science fiction thriller. And of course, this is a picture of one of my heroes, Albert Einstein. He comes in and out of the story because in the story, the hero, one of the things he does, just as an aside, by being in the think tank, having his brain removed from his body, as Einstein's was after he died, is how to prove the unified field theory that Einstein was sure was true, but he couldn't prove it. So in the book, our hero wants to prove that as just a side effect of the story. And so he invents a new number. It's called zero with an exponent of I standing for infinity. And that's a new number that if Einstein had it, we just invented it for this book and for the story because we had to. If Einstein had that number in his inventory of numbers, he would have proven his own unified field theory. And, uh, and so that's one of the exciting pieces of news about Brain Drain. So we do that for him. Now, this is a picture of global warming, and it's actually taken from a video by NASA that goes over about 50 years of global warming. And it's amazing. And this also plays a major role in the story, because in the end, we have to do some drastic things to save our planet. And if you watch this movie that we're going to give you a reference to at the website, it really does change your mind about global warming and how serious it is. This red region you see in front of you is basically today's warming. And when the video starts out, there's almost no red. There's a couple of tiny red spots in like Africa and South America. That's it, about 30, 40 years ago. And then these red spots grow. Oh, so it's just NASA data. And it shows you over 30, 40 years how serious the problem is. And Brain Drain really, the story takes that on and gives you a wonderful solution to that problem. And everybody's looking for solutions. So it's part of the story. So Brain Drain is for anyone with a real brain. And if you have a real brain, you're a fan of classic science fiction like I am, I hope. And this is going to go down as one of the most classic science fiction stories of all time. So myaudiblebooks.com is where you find all of these books, including Brain Drain, my latest and greatest. And yeah, that's me, Michael Mathiesen. I'm very proud of this. So I hope you'll find that Audible book or the print book or the Kindle book as soon as you can. And this is just kind of a teaser. The waters are rising in the story, and a few people escape, but only very few. And the waters just get higher and higher and higher. And it's a wonderful story. You have to get the Audible book. So myaudiblebooks.com, and you'll be thrilled. Give it a review when you're done. We always appreciate good reviews on Amazon or Kindle or Audible. So one of the things that we say, that we make clear in the story, is that when your brain waves make music with those of another, that's a real example of true love. So you want to find out about brain waves and the brain drain in that story. Again, myaudiblebooks.com. Free books online is free books of all kinds, is free books to read. We have Audible, Amazon Prime. We've got Amazon Prime audiobooks, the free audiobooks app, and of course the Audible free trial, which makes this so incredible. What an offer to get from Audible and have my book basically for free. Now, the next book I want to tell you about is something I wrote previous to Brain Drain. It's called Antimatter. And this story centers around something that happened to me years ago. And after very, very careful scientific analysis and experimentation, I realized that it's not bad luck, it's not karma, it's not lousy friends that makes everything go wrong in your life. It's really antimatter. And people don't realize how much antimatter there is in the universe. And it's part of the universe. We just don't think about it because we don't realize it's around. And the reason we don't realize that antimatter is around is because when antimatter encounters any matter, you have a total annihilation of the matter. So when any antimatter runs into the ordinary stuff in our lives, which we call matter, these two things annihilate each other. So before you're aware of antimatter, they do their dirty deeds. And this is inside your brain. Your brain is made out of antimatter. So you'll see things differently because of the antimatter clouds that our planet runs through all the time. The center of our Milky Way galaxy has a huge cloud basically floating around the center of our galaxy. So it's my opinion that antimatter is part of our galaxy and it's part of the universe, and it's something we just have to go through. And this story is all about how the hero figures his way out through his analysis of antimatter, and we show historically a lot of events and how antimatter really was the cause of them, not stupidity and not incompetence and not you know uh, the regular things that you're taught in school. It's really the antimatter that's running around, encountering the matter, the material world, and creating events that are completely, unexpected, off base. It's a different universe. If there's enough antimatter in your life, you're going to be part of a different universe model, a different multiverse. And believe it or not, and that's how it happens. And antimatter is the doorway into different universes. And this is talked about in the story, but how we are where we are because of a lot of antimatter a few years ago made some events that we really didn't need to go through, but we went through them. So remember that. It's not bad luck or karma or lousy friends. It's antimatter that ruins your life. Another great Audible book, and you'll find it at myaudiblebooks.com. And again, it's free Audible books because of the Audible free trial. And so Zoom, here we go away. Here we go again. Every time you see one of these little rocket ships, it's because I'm telling you we're going to sample another of my wonderful Audible books. So prior to antimatter, after antimatter, prior to brain drain, I wrote a book called Someone Completely New. And this is not science fiction, this is really science, because I realized recently that human leadership, our political systems all over the world have failed us. And so in this book, Someone Completely New, we talk about how it's time for the human race to start thinking about more robotic ways of completing our political business every day. So it's on automatic pilot. Now, the reason I got this, the way I got this idea, I know it sounds crazy, but hold your fire for a minute. We're just on the verge right now of going into autonomous cars, self-driving cars. And when you realize that you can have self-driving cars and that will cause far fewer accidents than having cars driven by humans, then you realize, why wouldn't we use this same technology to run the whole world? You can have far fewer tragedies and horrific events like we're having now because humans aren't in charge, robots are. So think about that. I know it sounds crazy, but I believe it's our only way out of the situation we're in right now. So Someone Completely New is all about having a robotic uh, leadership, a robotic system of government. And there are dangers, of course. We talk about all of those. And they're not as dangerous as the ones that we're facing now by letting humans control everything. Okay? So you want to just get into that a little bit if you're worried about some of the things that are going on in the world today. So here we go again with another rocket ship. We're going to talk about another of my favorite Audible books, which of course are mine. And so and we're going in order of precedence when they were written, basically. One of the ways I got into all of this was by realizing something about subatomic particles in quantum physics a few years ago. So I wrote a book called The Four States of Consciousness when I realized that electrons are actually conscious beings. Again, I know it sounds crazy. Everything you find here may sound crazy at first because it's unique. It's new information. It's new science. But actually, they have discovered that electrons are aware of each other. And the way they become aware of each other is really miraculous, but they do. And it's called the phenomenon of entanglement. And if you don't believe me, Google it after this video, and you'll see all kinds of articles about entangled electrons. And basically what it means is that they are aware of one another, of their partners. They each get a partner, and they're aware of each other, and they're aware of their state, and even where the other partner is, even if you separate them by millions of miles, which the Japanese have actually done, not millions, but they did thousands of miles of separation, and these two entangled electrons knew exactly where each other was. And that's a relatively new experiment that's been replicated, so you have to regard it as a generally accepted truth in science now. And so when you think about entangled electrons and how they're aware of each other, that tells you that everything in the universe is aware has some form of consciousness and some form of awareness. Not like human awareness, of course, And don't think about it, don't mix intelligence up with consciousness. We teach you about that. Even ants are conscious beings. They know that they exist. They don't have a very high degree of intelligence, but they do know that they exist. That knowledge of their existence is consciousness. So it starts at the electronic level and works its way up. And in this book, The Four States of Consciousness, we find out how that happens, how the electronic consciousness flows all the way up into our consciousness. And just if you think I'm wrong, just study brain anatomy for a few minutes, and you'll find that all of our thoughts are based on electronic transmission of data through our synapses in our brain cells. Electronic means because of electrons. So electrons are aware of each other. Electrons are in our brain. We become aware of the universe. It's a really a revolutionary kind of thought process, but you need to be aware of it because it is true. I'm convinced of it. So that's the four states of consciousness. And again, myaudiblebooks.com has all of my Audible books. I have dozens of them, by the way. You're just getting the best ones and the top, one of my favorites in this video. So there's the rocket ship again. That means we're going to attack another one of my best Audible books. And so right before some of these other books I've talked about, I wrote one called Metamorphosis, #AI Cocoon. And this is interesting because we are getting into artificial intelligence. That's what AI stands for. And there are people that believe that, and I'm one of them, by the way, that we will someday be able to take our own brain, our own consciousness, and transform it into some kind of technology. Don't know if it'll be a computer, something like a computer, something with computer brains in there, but AI now is getting very advanced. There are robots already that talk very much like humans. They're not conscious beings yet, but they sound like they are, so we're getting close. And this technology gets better and better and better, especially with the fact that computers now are starting a new evolution of their own where they used to be able to just think in terms of yes and no. It's binary language. The parts of the computer that do the computing are either on or off, yes or no, and zeros and ones. You've all heard that. Well, that zero means off, the one means on, and so these transistors which are billions of them in a computer, are either on or off. So there's two decisions a computer makes all the time. That's it. The sum of all those decisions is what you get in your computer. But now they have computers that are going to be, and this is human thinking now. The difference is computers have been able to think yes and no only. But with quantum computing now, they're going to be able to think yes, no, and maybe. And that's how the human mind thinks. So it is possible that someday we get in this thing called the AI cocoon and we live forever. So think about, the robots, the robotic things that you're hearing about, seeing in the news, and just project a few years ahead and you'll see my book, Metamorphosis, and hopefully you'll get it. It's because it's a wonderful analysis of what's coming and what we need to do, because you don't want to just let it happen willy-nilly with the powers that be handling the metamorphosis. It's actually it will be a genetic change in our evolution when we do this. When we leave the human body and go into the machine, that's going to be a huge genetic change. I mean, we talk about it in the book, and you don't want to just let the leadership of the scientific and technological community design how this is going to happen, because it's going to be the biggest step in our evolution ever, and we go into that in the book. And you need to know how to avoid the dangers of all of that and what you need to start thinking about right now. So there's our rocket ship again, meaning we're going to take another trip down the best Audible books. and the world, and of course they're mine, so I have to say that I am prejudiced. Somewhere along the line, I wrote a book called Maxtricity, and again, it has to do with the science of entangled electrons. This is where I got my highest form of education, because when you study quantum physics and you get into this phenomenon of entangled electrons, it really opens up huge vistas in your mind. And so you want to read Maxtricity, the science of entangled electrons, because besides the effects of our consciousness and how our consciousness was created, there's also a very practical electronic device that I invent here in Maxtricity, because electricity, the way we use electricity today, is extremely inefficient and is the main cause of global warming. All the power we have to put into generating electricity, burning fossil fuels, etc., is extremely unhealthy. But if you take entangled electrons and you put them in a certain organization, which I show you quite well with diagrams in the book, then you're generating electricity from the spin of the electron, and especially these entangled electrons, because what they do is they spin in opposite directions. That gives you gearing, a form of subatomic gearing, and that is 1,000 times more, it's 1 billion times more efficient than the flow of electrons. Right now we use the flow of electrons. They come from the power plant down the street and they flow into our homes along the wires. They heat up the wires and lose 50–60% of the power generated at the power plant because of the resistance in the cabling all the way to your house. So when you use the spin of electrons instead of the flow of electrons, not a single electron moves anywhere. It just reverses the spin of its next door neighbor. And that's how these things, solar panels, can become way more efficient. We'll be able to power the whole world with solar panels that are way more efficient, like 1,000 times more efficient, and never have to burn any fossil fuel. If we do burn fossil fuel, it'll only be in special areas where they can't have solar. And 1 gallon of, or I should say 1 barrel of oil would probably power an entire city for a year. So that's the difference in efficiency between the flow of electrons and the spin of electrons. Everything in the universe is spinning, including electrons. Imagine if you could just harness some of that spin in the universe by using the spin of the electrons. This is what I'm talking about. These are entangled electrons. When the one on the left right here spins up, its partner spins down. And what we've done with experiments is change the spin of this one or this one, doesn't matter. And let's say you flip this one to spinning up, this one will immediately spin down. And it's amazing because for my books on consciousness, I've noticed how I asked myself the question, how does this one know that the other one changed its spin? And again, they can be separated over thousands of miles. And most physicists who get into this think that they could be separated by the opposite ends of the universe. And still, this one, when you change this spin, would change the spin of the other partner immediately. So there's no effect of distance or time or anything. But my main point is, how does this one know about the other one? And that's how we started our consciousness thinking. And then we realized, if this one spins down and this one spins up without any interference between the two, that's a mechanical device that we can use to generate electricity by using a spin of this one to force this one to spin in the opposite direction. And then this one forces the next one to spin in the opposite direction. And what you have is a daisy chain, just like the gears in a car. And the gears of the electronic system are way more efficient that way than trying to make those electrons flow down the wire. So Maxtricity, the science of entangled electrons, is a good one. Uh, I've got both, as you can tell, I've got both science fiction and science books. I like to write science book and then write a science fiction book about what I learned, or I'll get an idea about science fiction, and then the science that comes out of that will be my next book. Will be the science that comes out of the science fiction book. Brain drain is a good example. The invention of a new number is what I'm going to cover in my next book, Brain Drain Science. So whether you like science or science fiction, I think they're both interrelated. And there's that rocket ship again, taking off, meaning we're going to now tackle another one of my next books, The God Particle Bible. Now, this was probably my first book on subatomic physics that I wrote, because it was the most influential moment in my life when they discovered the God particle. It had been predicted 50 years earlier by Professor Higgs in Scotland, because he knew that there was something very seriously missing in the modern accepted model of subatomic physics or quantum physics. So he predicted that there had to be a God particle, something that makes all the other particles achieve their mass. And that's what the God particle does. And so it's the first thing that is born in the Big Bang, and becomes the creator of everything else that we see in the universe, is the God particle. And that to me suggested a book called The God Particle Bible. So the science, you see the subtitle there is Science Rescues Religion, because it really does prove that there is a God, right? If God sends out his God particles to create everything in the universe, he is the master creator. It's just as simple as that. You don't have to get more complicated or more spiritual. It's just the fact that there are God particles. They're the first things that are created in the universe, as far as we know. And then they go out and they create every other particle in the universe. Therefore, there is a God. There is a God that designed everything to happen that way. That kind of rationality and logic does not happen by accident. A lot of scientists think it's all random. The universe is random scientific events like that, but of course it can't be random. Not when you think about it that way. God particles creating everything else sent out from the Big Bang. First things that are created had to come from God. Okay, so this is how they found them. This is the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. And to get an idea of how big this is, down here you see a truck. So a human being sitting in that truck is about this size. So these are 3 or 4 stories high, maybe 5 stories high, and they're the largest, most powerful magnets in the world. And they shoot electrons or protons down through a pipe that's 30 miles in circumference. And then they crash them into each other, and they find out from the debris what happened and what these particles are made out of. And that's how they discovered the God particle on July 4th, 2012. I was waiting for this to happen. They prepped the world that it might happen. They did find the God particle. That changed my life. And by the way, it changed everyone else's life too, because now we have scientific proof that there is a God. And that's where they found it, right there. So myaudiblebooks.com, I think, what the basic story here is that you have an intro into some really interesting way to read books online and have free books to read and get some of the best Audible books, the best free Audible book apps in the world with the Audible free trial. And what else can we say about how to get educated in the things of the world that are very unique and very unusual. This is one of the things that I talk about in several of my books, 2 black holes colliding into each other. And when that happened 1.3 billion years ago, it set up the greatest gravity wave interaction that we know about. And we discovered those gravity waves by another amazing scientific instrument called LIGO, the Laser Interferometer Gravity Wave Observatory. And there's 2 of them in this country. And they discovered the gravity waves on September 15th, they had just finished building the thing. It took about 50 years. They just finished building it. They were testing it. They left it on kind of by accident. They went home to go to sleep because they were so tired of working on this thing for 50 years. Thousands of physicists and scientists. It's the most sensitive instrument in the history of the world. And 1.3 billion years after this event, the waves from this event passed over the Earth, and LIGO found them and detected them. And when they changed them into sound waves to demonstrate what they were like, the sound wave was, and so to me, this was the universe whistling at us. 1.3 billion years ago, when they started, and about that time on the Earth, life was just beginning. And so when we get here and we're able to build a device sensitive enough to pick up on gravity waves, it hit the same day, within a few hours of when we turned the thing on. That again is no coincidence. And when we caught the tail end of the gravity wave that passed by because of these two black holes crashing into each other, again, 1.3 billion years ago, and we turn on this thing, and then the gravity waves pass the Earth. If we hadn't turned that thing on, we would never have heard it. And it was, so that's how I want to leave you, is that the universe is out there. It's whistling to you, and you need to find out what it all means, and you will at myaudiblebooks.com. I promise. Trust me. One last little note, that in case I haven't sold you on my particular viewpoint of the world. This is a picture taken by Voyager in the 90s, one of the most incredible things that's ever happened from our technology. This is a picture from Voyager after it left our solar system. It's something like I don't know, 20 billion miles away. It's outside of any influence of the sun or planets or anything. It's in interstellar space. And they decided by hook or by crook to turn the thing around. It had taken shots of the solar system on the way out, and all the planets. They're really beautiful photographs, and we learned a lot. But then when it's leaving, they turned the thing around and had it shoot some pictures of where it had been. No one ever planned that. They had no idea what would happen. And they almost didn't do it because they were running out of money. But Carl Sagan convinced NASA to do that. And when they turned around and took the shot, this is the image that came back. I've got a circle around this little white dot in there because some of you probably already know this is a light beam from the sun, as these are. And in that light beam is, right there, planet Earth, our home. And it's hard for me to talk about what a moment that is for human beings to launch something that far away and to look back through the universe to see where we've come. And where we've come from is just a tiny little speck of dust, all created by the God particles. And these things don't happen by coincidence. Here's more proof where a beam of light is focused on the Earth so that we can see how tiny a place we live on, and yet how important it is for us to maintain it. So I hope you'll go to my Audible books and download one of my books, if not all of them. Give them a good review. You've spent a lot of time with me, and I really appreciate that. It's funny that I cannot talk about some of the discoveries that I've made without getting emotional. I'm sorry about that. But it's all part of the fun And, and whether or not I win a Nobel Prize for some of this stuff, I doubt it. I doubt that very much. That's the Nobel Prize. But I'm going to let you be the judge. So thank you very much for listening, and see you in the next video. God bless.